Why buy someone else's old problems? Resale homes often come with outdated appliances, inefficient insulation, and costly hidden repairs. City Ventures offers a better way. Our brand new homes feature modern open floor plans, stylish fixtures, and the peace of mind that comes with a builder's warranty. Everything is fresh, functional, and designed for how you live today. Skip the renovation headaches and move into something perfect. Find your new beginning at cityventures.com. That's cityventures.com.
Nice one, Jen. Well, if you enjoyed Jen's show, and you've hung around to give this a go, having never heard one of these before, then fucking good on you. I guess, to everyone else, you're alright. I'm the world around you, and this is Pause for Thought on Fresh Old FM. This week, we're gonna look into giants, and I want to start this off by saying we won't be taking into account an alleged Photoshop battle from the early 2000s. I think it was 2002, 2003-ish. Even though, they're good photos, innit? They're compelling and all that, but they're not real, innit? And I suppose that's more so a credit to their creators to be able to make such good photos, fucking 18 years ago. A lot of our photographs that we deem our photographs of giants come from this competition, which was called Archaeological Anomalies 2. This competition even made National Geographic write an article, because after a few years there were articles circulating saying that National Geographic had actually discovered giants. But that's what they want you to believe. Although contrary to popular belief, the internet did exist in 2002, and even weirder still, so did National Geographic and Photoshop. But what if this was just a clever way of being able to muddy the waters? They, and that's, the big they, may have organised this competition knowing that in years to come, conspiracy would become a big thing again. After all, this giant scandal about oversized skeletons was only about a year after 9/11. Could it have been to muddy the conspiratorial waters? They didn't want people discussing steel beams and seeing demons in the smoke, so they got people rambling about massive humanoids instead, forever blurring the lines between reality and fiction. Maybe it's important to see what else was happening in 2002 at the time. A few major sporting events were happening, like the Winter Olympics in America and the World Cup in Japan and South Korea. Now, these sporting events will have allowed for a lot of people to meet and discuss ideas and share web addresses for internet forums. So, could the release of the giant photographs actually have been a way to test if they can control conversation topics amongst big crowds? The Queen Mother died in England, a day which I remember to this day because, on a personal note, it affected me quite deeply, because I remember I used to watch cartoons early in the morning. And I think I was trying to watch Pokemon that morning, but it didn't come on because of her death. All the cartoons got cancelled, and there was like an announcement saying the Queen Mother's dead. There was a lot of countries that year that got added into NATO. So we briefly, I think, mentioned that in an episode of Truth Seeking the other week. These countries were Bulgaria, Slovakia, Estonia, Latvia, Romania, Slovenia, and Lithuania. That Truth Seeking, what I'm on about there, is another show I do live on a Thursday at 7 PM with me and Jimmy Budd. And if you haven't heard that show about geopolitics, and you may not actually know why NATO is or isn't significant, I don't want to ruin it for you, in the realm of geopolitics. Anyway, I've read on the internet that it's pretty much, the whole idea of NATO is pretty much like a five-a-side team, with America as one captain looking to make a bigger team than Russia, the other captain. Or at least that's what it was originally for. But now the neighbour's got his mates over from school, and there's way too many feet for one ball. So it's just, now the whole thing just seems to become like a game of red arse instead. But this isn't about NATO or geopolitics, it's about a much bigger issue, giants. So one way that the dirty, great, big so-called they, I'm doing air quotation marks when I accentuate they, one of the ways that they managed to trick people into believing that giants weren't real was by releasing Ice Age, a film that glorifies giant creatures, but the humans in the story would have regular size. Like, they have a little baby in it in the first one, and he's just a normal size baby, he's not a giant. Like, everything else is massive except the humans are normal size, mate. It's ridiculous. And that came out that year, adding to the general confusion of the moviegoer and sci-fi buff alike, though. They also released Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. But they released another science fiction regarded by some as an epic, Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, a film that refuses to mention steel beams, petrol-melting buildings, and not even any controlled explosions, a film entirely dedicated to a strange, vertically challenged race of jeweler and a walk in the woods. But there were giants in the Lord of the Rings, somewhere. And that's my point. They keep them in what is considered to be believed as make-believe, but much like the Bible, the Lord of the Rings is based off of a story written well in excess of over 50 years ago, and both of them include and contain giants. Let's have a song. This is On the Boulevard by Royster 59, Knots and Adonis. Anyway, let's get into giants. There are reports of 11-foot high men and huge skeletons of Native Americans. Now, there's a lot out there from Americans about American giants, but what's worth remembering is that Pete guy. We all know who I'm on about, innit? The Lindo man, a bloke that was found perfectly preserved, 5'6" bloke. Could the Lindo man, bog boy, Preservation Pete, actually, could he have been a baby giant? But we've all been lied to as to not cause a fuss in the very posh area that it was found in, known as Wilmslow, in Cheshire. Could we be giants too, just younger versions of them? Maybe there are things happening to our air that restricts our growth so that more of us can coexist together, because if we were all massive giants then we'd take up too much space. But if they keep us as young giants, like 6 foot or something, that's much more manageable and easier to contain. We don't have to build buildings nearly as tall. Because, like dinosaurs, they were only that big so that their lungs could make use of the gases in the air at that time. So maybe someone has artificially altered the air on our planet in order to make us all smaller and more manageable. Because, whatever happened to chemtrails? There used to be thousands of hours worth of that sort of thing filling up my YouTube history and suggestions. Then the rumours of the CIA admitting that they were real. And then after that, fuck all, it just seems to disappear into the ether, like the chemtrails themselves. Could that have been a test to see how we'd all react to being told? Just like they did when they said that there was alien life on Mars? Who knows? I may have mentioned this before, but we do know that there is a history of chemicals being introduced to the air that altered the effects of human behaviour. Not chemicals thrown in the air by a seedy South American taxi driver. I'm not talking about scopolamine, like that drug that you can just fling in the air, and if you go like that and get a little bit of inside you become a zombie that does anything at all. I don't mean that. I'm talking about the leaded fuel that was used in the mid-1900s, because I've read headlines and some sentences that suggest that many violent acts of those time periods could be put down to the lead being pumped into people's lungs at ground level. But back to something we can touch, because there isn't any lead in petrol anymore, so I guess there's nothing to worry about there anymore. Giants, as giants, and I'm currently sat looking at a photograph of a very small man with 2 larger men, and it's not niche gay porn, it's actually a photograph of regularly sized Captain Frederick Cook in 1901, standing in between 2 giants. The photo was taken during his travels between a place called Patagonia and Antarctica. Patagonia is like South America, like right down on is it called the peninsula, the lower point of South America, the most southern point, should we say. It was taken whilst he was exploring the islands in that area. He was also allegedly the first man to reach the North Pole on foot, or at least the first white man to do it like that I can find evidence of. But what makes it more interesting is that both he and Richard E. Byrd, the bloke that said that there were mammoths in Antarctica, both of them were recorded as the first person to reach the North Pole by foot and air respectively, but both these explorers have tried to talk of creatures beyond our currently accepted scope of fauna, and both of them have been retrospectively, they've been removed from their podiums, their status as first man to, first person to. They've removed that. Now, is that because they've been talking about mammoths and all this other stuff, or is it just to discredit the stories because they don't want people thinking there could be more than what they're told? Yeah, I mean, we may never know. We might never find that out because it's like 100 years ago, innit? But the giants that Cook spoke to and was photographed with were around 7 foot tall, so that's not massive, innit? That's not that big. But There are 7-foot people today who apparently the children of these giants could be around the size of the peak man of Wilmslow. So could it be that giants, or indeed humans, are supposed to be grown in the ground? And like Benjamin Button is more of like a documentary, because at the end of Benjamin Button, I assume it starts like a zombie film and he comes emerging out the ground like fucking Freddy Krueger and climbs out the ground. Maybe for some reason time's being reversed, and we see time as it's going forwards and it's normal, but maybe it's actually going backwards, and that's why we come out of the ground. Maybe humans are supposed to be grown like potatoes. Maybe that someone's reversing time to try and figure out where one particular lineage comes from. You know, because people are supposed to be searching for a so-called bloodline, I guess, like the Holy Grail, the bloodline or whatever. So maybe time's going backwards and we're experiencing it all, but we live our lives going forward, obviously, because that's all we would know. But realistically, we're going backwards, and you know, because the end of your life and the start of your life is somewhat similar anyway, isn't it? You know, but fucking getting a bit off track there. It's we don't know, because we don't know if humans are supposed to be grown in the ground like giants, you know. And it's unknown, because the British Museum, we can blame the British Museum, because they've taken the best Pete that we'll ever know and shoved him in the equivalent of a fish tank, stopping him from reaching maturity and saving the people of Cheshire from the rampaging megalithic man of the Moss Man. Maybe that's as close as we'll ever get to like a modern cryptid in England. Of course, like down in the southwest, they've got the Owlman of Cornwall, but many believe that that's just a sex offender with a ladder who likes to knock about in trees, in cemeteries, and perv on young women. We don't really have any real cryptids. I mean, we got Nessie, but that's not enough for me, innit? I want a Moss Man. Did you know that Sir Francis Drake once had a group of giants in San Francisco, and they tried to crown him king? There was records of that on the internet. It's all recorded in a biography that was written by Drake's nephew. Some of these giants were only around 7'6", but I mean, that's still pretty sizable, isn't it? They roared apparently and lived life as a chaotic tribe. Other giants were found along the Mississippi River as well in America, and they were said to be 11 palms in height, which I don't understand, because when I did that against my door, that comes out at about 5 foot. So I must be using that wrong. Maybe it's from like the base of your palm to like your wrist to your fingertip, but I'm not sure. I thought it'd just be the width of your palm. Either way, that's not that tall, 11 palms in height. And they were living with a race of pygmies who were actually around 5 palms in height. You know, and as I say, it's not very big when I measure it against the door, but when I measure it against something smaller like my girlfriend's lunchbox, it's fucking massive, mate. Like if you compare 5 palms of anything next to, like, compare it to a pencil, mate, it's huge. So I don't really know what we're comparing it against. Are we to believe that people were the same size as what they are now, back when Sir Francis Drake was knocking about, you know, getting around on his boat, fucking, I assume, killing people, living some form of nomadic pirate lifestyle? But I don't know much about him, and very, very little. I'd never heard of him till I moved down south. But it gets weirder though. It does get weirder, because if you, instead of palms I'm thinking palms in as well, you know, as like the human hand, but there's other types of palm in it, so they're even bigger and it makes more sense that they would be giants if you take into consideration palm trees and their leaves. And astonishing, you know, when you think, really, because according to Google, these trees hadn't even been discovered until the late 1700s. So maybe that was like a new measuring system at the time. You know, we'll use palm tree leaves to measure big things. Around the river, there'd been discoveries of bones. You know, bones left by both like giants and the pygmies in, you know, the Mississippi River around there. And it's weird to think that they'd live alongside each other. And I know that's what you're thinking. Why would someone so tall live with something so small? But that's not all that true. That it's that weird, is it? Because that's not all, you know. Tall people and short people are always inexplicably entwined with one another. Tall guys like short women acknowledge tall men. Short fellas love tall women, and tall women acknowledge short men. There are talks of people finding a giant from the Caribbean islands, or taking him all the way to Spain by boat, with reports tied to it that these giants being manipulated to stay small, because no one has recently been applying a magic ointment to the bones of these children. Now, you can take from that what you want, but that's pretty much verbatim what I've read. Like, it's fucking mental. I've summarised it, but like almost all I've done is shorten it down. They believe that someone took a giant from the Caribbean islands, took him to Spain or her to Spain, but that giant was made to stay small because as I said, a magic ointment, which I couldn't find fucking anything else about, was used to be directly applied to the bones of children, and that would help them to grow or stop them from growing. It wasn't clear, but I fucking thought it was fascinating me to find. That's fucking mental. Imagine that. Imagine the surgery. Oh, he's going in for his bone rubbing on Wednesday. Wish him luck. Get him a card. Get her some flowers. Get her a box of chocolates. You don't want to get the small box. It's going to be massive by the time it's over. Don't make any fucking sense, mate. It's mental. Anyway, there's other stories of a group of 7 foot plus Irish sounding giants. So giants that sounded Irish, had Irish accents in them, which again, fucking weird. They had cultures and similarities that tie in with Southern Ireland today, according to one of the things I read on the internet. They were said to be white, very tall, and bearded with Irish accents. That's what I could find on them. So, could that mean that the leprechaun itself, the myth of the leprechaun, is a bit of a lie? A myth pushed by the giant hiders to make people associate the Irish with an angry, gold-hungry little person, rather than to associate the Irish with these massive giants. But I'll tell you what though, if you ignore the beard, the Irish accents, and the culture, and just hear tall and white, that links these creatures here to aliens, also known as the Tall Whites, associated with aliens such as like Val Valiant Thor from Venus, the inner hollow Venus Val Valiant Thor came from, supposedly. And the alien link would explain why the leprechaun is always obsessed with gold, because many believe that aliens came here to harvest our gold. So what if in reality the giant population of Earth cohabited with the pygmies in order to fight off the aliens? Or what if the aliens brainwashed the pygmies to search out gold, conditioned them like you would a seeing eye dog, except instead of looking out for cars and drop curbs, the pygmies were made to sniff out gold from under the surface of the earth? That could be why they were good at it, because, that could be why the pygmies were better than the giants at sniffing out gold from the earth, like some form of prized pig, because obviously the pygmies' nose will be closer to the ground than the giant's nose, making them better at sniffing out gold. Fucking hell, maybe the reason that they lived alongside giants is because they were all enslaved, and then they paired with one another. The little ones sniff out the veins, and the giants rip it from the ground. So all of them possibly enslaved. And then they would pair them together. Be like, right, you're going to take one giant and 3 pygmies, send them off. That giant there's a bit weak, so we'll just give him the 1 pygmy. That pygmy there is pretty strong-willed. We haven't broken him yet, so we'll give them 2 giants. That rowdy giant there and the quieter giant who follows the rules, we'll bunch all of them together and push them out. They don't need tools, because obviously the giants are fucking massive. They're the size of 11 palm leaves tall, which is fucking huge. It's probably bigger than a house. So they could just fucking rip dirt out of the ground. They would have hands like literal fucking buckets, I'd assume. They could make fucking like cup their hands like you do when you're going to fire water out the palms of your hands, and they could just do that, mate. Fucking rip them out, like pulling trees out of the ground like we'd pull a fucking leaf out of the bottom of our shoe. Fucking gotten a bit distracted though there, to be fair. You can see where I'm going with that, innit? Because it wouldn't make sense to do it the other way around. Why? I can't imagine that the pygmies would be in charge of the giants. I really can't. And maybe that's where we actually come from. Humans as we are, maybe we are the children. The children, the spawn, I guess. It would be children, wouldn't it? Because they're humanoid, so they're not like fucking creatures and humans. I think they're all humans. I think the idea is that the giants are massive humans and the pygmies were just humans, but very, very small. I'm not sure, but that's what we're going with. And maybe that's where we come from. Maybe our height isn't because we haven't had the magic ointments of the giant king and queen rubbed directly onto our bones, but in fact it's the result of giants and pygmies making love to one another at the riverside all those years ago. It's possible, isn't it? It's kind of romantic as well in a way. let's pop another song on, because I've gone massively away from my notes again. This is the first single by Mike Reckless after he changed his name from Mike Righteous. This is Pathways. According to Hugh Newman, a name suspiciously like Huge Human, there were bones from giants, more specifically a 3-foot-long thigh bone from a giant that was on display in a museum until it was removed because of the Nagpur Act in the 1990s. The Nagpur Act is an American law. It stands for the Native American Graves Protection and Rehabilitation Act. And I don't know if there's other laws in existence like this, but I think it's fucking proper interesting to see like a mummified Egyptian in a museum. But realistically though, you do just look at it and go, fucking mad, innit, that's not rotted away. That is all you do in a museum when you look at a mummy. You don't do anything else. You're not allowed to fucking lick it. You're not allowed to flick it. You're not allowed to feel what it feels like. Stick your hand in the goo beneath the fucking bandages. You can't unbandage it to see what it looks like. You don't do that. You just look at it and go, look at that. That's mad, that, innit? And you carry on your journey then, around the building towards the exit. That's all a museum is basically a fucking queue with scenery. But no matter how interesting it is, it's still fucking weird to think that at some point someone found a tomb that was presumably full of interesting items, and they thought, you know what we'll do? You know what? Fuck it, we'll have that dead guy and all. Shove that dead guy on the back of the horse. We'll take him and all. Get the jewels, obviously. Get the jewels. Get the gold. That silver bit there. Yeah, bring that. That looks like an arrowhead. Bring that. That's good. Leave the ray guns. We'll leave them. We don't know what they are. They look scary. Bring the dead guy. It's fucking weird, mate. I find it odd that we need a law, that we need laws to say to people, you stop fucking digging up graves, you mad cunt. Pack it in. But we do, because archaeologists exist and anthropologists, and people have made whole careers out of digging up dead people. And people genuinely, literally made careers out of digging up dead people, didn't they? Like fucking Burke and Hare, was it, that fucking was selling people's body parts and that they just died. Anyway, a giant's bones, though, you can understand why that would get put in a museum. Not many people even know that giants exist. This might be the first time that you're hearing that giants existed anyway today on Pause for Thought on Threshold FM. A Threshold for FM exclusive, mate, there, you know. But these bones were supposed to know that it's a giant's tibula or fibula, the fucking leg bone. And I don't know how they would know that, but your first thought would be, fucking hell, they must have the giraffes here or something, innit? Like, or obviously dinosaurs. But then you've got a lot of people that think dinosaurs are just a lie that have been made up by scientists, or the big they, the people that are paying scientists, according to these people. But I honestly question that dinosaurs are, made up. Like that process, that thought process, you got to question it, innit? Because dinosaurs, really, and the invention, or the so-called invention of dinosaurs, they're the only thing for me that makes a trip to the museum worthwhile. But I suppose it's kind of weird that the thing that they've made up to hide the fact giants exist is just as interesting as a giant itself. I mean, that gives it some credence. To like, fucking hell, there was giant people. We should, we're gonna have to make them big. But what's a big thing? What something you're gonna want to know about, but then never want back again? You're gonna be happy that they're gone. Fucking giant snakes and giant lizards, mate. Fucking angry giant birds that want to fucking fly around and rip your head off. Like, that'll just shut people up, innit? People don't care then. They're like, oh, fucking hell, I'm glad they're not about anymore. Whereas when you find out that, you read, the humans came and fucking acted a genocide or whatever, I don't know what the word is for the verb for committing a genocide. Is it just committing a genocide against giants? Like, well, where the fuck, you wouldn't be happy, would you? You'd be like, fucking hell, that's horrendous. But against massive lizards, mate, that's buzzing. You're fine, it's sound, because a fucking meteorite did the work for you. And even then, the people that believe in it's mad. The people that don't believe in dinosaurs still believe in that meteorite, but they don't believe it's a meteorite. They believe it was a weapon from aliens. It's fucking mental, mate. I love this sort of stuff. But they, like I was saying, anyway, they're as interesting as one another, innit? The giants and the dinosaurs. They're on, like, to me at least, they're on a par. Like, both of them are fucking fascinating ideas. If you said to me, look at this dead giant I've just found in my neighbour's garden, I'm fucking on my way there, mate. If you bell me and you say, come and look at this velociraptor I've just found across the road in Fat Barry's garden, I'll be there as soon as I can, mate. But it's always going to be a bit of me in my head wondering, Why were you making pits in Barry's garden in the first place? Like, what were you looking for? If you didn't expect to find a velociraptor, if you didn't expect to find giant bones, what did you think you was going to find in Fat Barry's meat? So maybe the only reason that we have fossils from big creatures is because we went around finding them all so that we could lie about what they are. Or maybe someone went and buried them to hide them thousands of years ago, to hide the fact that giants even existed. Maybe they're like a sort of like a ginger person, and if you get too many of them in an enclosed space, the universe takes magical turns. What's weird about the idea of the giants is it seems to be that the believers of it seem to think that we've gotten smaller as time goes by, rather than the commonly accepted idea of people getting taller as times go by. And you gotta wonder, do people just like a fucking argument? Because I again, this has been an hard one to research, man. Evident, like, people genuinely believe people have gotten shorter since the giants existed. Which makes sense if you believe that giants existed, because yes, we are smaller than giants, but it's fucking mad, mate. Like, you listen to people talk about the giants, and you hear a lot of them discuss about how there was 7-foot skeletons found all over the place, but I guess if you only focused on how 4-foot skeletons were found, you could say, look at all these small skeletons we found, and it doesn't really feel like it proves anything to go, oh yeah, we found all of these skeletons and these people were 7'4", we found loads of them. And then to disregard all of the 5'6" skeletons that they found in the same grave, kind of thing. We don't know if there was or if there wasn't, but that does seem a bit of an oversight kind of thing with this. And it's not normally, on these shows, I don't normally come at it and be like, I don't believe this one. And it's not that I don't believe it, it's just that it was a sort of a new thing for me to explore, and I thought there'd be quite a lot on it. But again, like I keep saying, man, there's not loads. As long as you don't go down the religious route of it all, there's not a lot there. Obviously, you've got stuff to do with the Nordics. They believed that there was a realm that was just giants, Ynmir or something like that, I think it was called, just off the top of my head. I'm probably wrong. Someone let me know in the Discord, if you know that off by heart. And I've spoke about Nordic stuff as well in the past shows, and I know I do tend to go on about religious stuff a bit, but there are a couple links in this though, at least to one past show, and that's a giant skeleton that was found near somewhere called the Serpent Mound. I think it was called the Serpent Mound, but that so-called serpent that made the shape of the mound, that was known in the area as the plumed serpent, a serpent with wings or feathers, a lot like Quetzalcoatl. That was called the feathered serpent. Then what makes another weird link to all this stuff is that someone in 1903 discovered a sealed jar of corn, the seeds, the corn seeds, and that was found 60 feet beneath the surface, and that was accompanied by an 8-foot skeleton, which is fucking weird, isn't it? That is odd. Then, what makes it weirder and ties it all in together with other episodes is that when that corn was planted, it produced a new type of a very efficient corn plant, which were then shared amongst a lot of farms. And it gets me thinking. When people say things like they're industry giants, when talking about some of the biggest corporations in the world, because obviously, the idea of some corporations have made new corn seeds, possibly, they're big corporations, but could we just be left to believe that they mean that they're just massive companies, when in actual fact, there are literal giants knocking about in these offices? Maybe that's why the buildings are always so big. Maybe they're made to look like the 40 floors, but in reality there's 20 floors for average-sized humans, and then above that, or even in between, there could be 10 floors for giants, and that's the actual reason why you see areas of buildings that aren't accessible to the general public, because then people would know that the windows of skyscrapers aren't always a couple of feet from the floor, that some of the windows of skyscrapers are actually a few meters from both the floor and the ceiling, because obviously they need to make these floors bigger, like more sizable, for the giants to be able to move around in more easily. Apparently, these burial mounds have effects on any corn grown in the area as well, according to some people, making the plants grow a bigger yield of crop, which is fucking mental. Maybe the burial mounds could be where the gases from the factories, or maybe there's a huge spacecraft that's stuck inside the crust of the earth and it's pumping out radioactive materials that help people grow taller and make corn grow faster too. One thing it could be, the corn could be growing better in them areas. Again, I'm sorry to play devil's advocate on this one, but I found it really fucking hard to look into, as I keep fucking saying. Could the corn not be growing better because of all the extra nutrients in the ground because it's now being grown on a burial mound? The burial mound where you've fucking pumped loads of fucking dead guys into, that's going to leach out loads of good stuff into the soil. And then obviously it's never been used because it's a fucking cemetery. And then someone's come along and gone, we could grow some corn there, you know. Loads of fucking room here, grow some corn. And then the corn grows great and they're like, oh fuck me, it's because of the giants. Because they don't want to say, actually I'm burying it on a fucking ancient cemetery. I probably shouldn't be doing this, it still feels wrong. 2,000, 3,000 years is still not long enough. A slightly different type of people that were found as well in another place, but there was allegedly horned skulls found in Pennsylvania, and they look pretty weird. I've looked at pictures of them. Allegedly they're fake, but apparently they're not the only horned skulls associated with giants that have been found. Like, these have been found near giants and associated with giants. But we're getting fucking off track there, because the fucking spacecraft and all that, you know, nothing to do with giants. So let's have the Here's How. And that's the end of this week's Here's How. Let's have a song. This is Right Wino by Stigger the Dump. What I don't understand is, if there were giant versions of animals that existed today, like, you know, giant sloths and giant sharks, then why couldn't there be giant humanoids? Just how these giant creatures died out, the giant humanoid creatures may have died out too, but some people believe these giants came about from the sexual advances and or rapes performed by angels or aliens or the fallen stars, depending on what information it is you've consumed. The giant humanoids are sometimes referred to as the Nephilim, and there's stories of them being born with legs like tree trunks. Now, obviously, realistically, a tree's always going to have a trunk because it's a tree, but even as a sapling, I guess, and just, you know, a little odd detail, did you know that when a tree is about a metre or so tall, it's called a whip? Completely unrelated, but I know a little bit about plants, so, you know, I thought I'd share that with you, show off me knowledge. But the tellings of these stories seems to want to make you believe that these pairs of tree trunks were from, you know, well-established trees. So imagine these ancient women giving birth to rugby players. That's what you've got to see in your head. A fucking, like, 4 foot, 5 foot built like a brick shithouse rugby player. Fucking emerging. Would they emerge? They'd fucking tear it from arse to mouth as these fucking infantile rugby player fucking aliens creep out of the carcass of a dead mother. Except, the mothers didn't die. A lot of them managed to give birth naturally. Some even believe that these children were birthed as a literal favour, not as a sacrifice, but as in like a payment to the quote-unquote gods. Like what a weird bloke who owns a flat might do with his student tenants, except in return for allowing the alien beings to slip them a length, the women's people would be bestowed with knowledge beyond their time, allowing their tribes, towns and lands, you know, the countrymen to overcome obstacles and enemy forces alike. Not like, you know, the weird landlord who's saying, oh, you know, if you toss me off, I'll shave a £5 off your bill every week. And then, you know, that escalates and before you know it, you're in a relationship with your landlord from 3 flats ago, and you feel bad about saying no to them, but you don't really need the money off your flat anymore, and then they're just giving you a £5 a week, and it snowballs, doesn't it? And that's what people believe happened here with the Nephilim, and that they got a bit too big for the boots, if you like. But I was thinking, if there are any animals that would be scarier if they were made into giants, then one of the more obvious ones you got to think of being a giant animal would be a pigeon. Imagine the state of them, mate. Fucking 15 foot tall pigeons would be fucking terrifying. Especially when they start shagging each other outside the Wilco's and that, because do you stand and watch? Do you throw them popcorn to feed them? Would they even eat popcorn anymore? Would they have moved on to things like bigger fruits like apples? Bigger foods like whole apples and that? What would they eat? Like, how would they survive? Obviously, plants would need to be bigger, innit? But I guess for a pigeon to be deemed a giant anyway, it would only really need to be proportionally bigger than the regular pigeons, just like giants are proportionally bigger to us. So even just like a metre tall pigeon would be pretty scary, especially if they still lived in these massive flocks in city centres. I reckon everyone would feed them in the streets just out of fear that they might follow them home and shit on the cars. Imagine how good windscreen companies would really do. Like, they'd fucking benefit, wouldn't they? They'd fucking do very well. There'd be adverts for new windscreens all the time if we had massive pigeons knocking about. Or would the windscreen companies would they find ways to manipulate birds into becoming bigger? Is that what happens? If birds start getting bigger, maybe it's not because they're robots and the drones, maybe it's windscreen companies and windscreen manufacturers and repairers, mechanics, making these birds grow bigger so that their shits get bigger and heavier, and there's more of a possibility that they could crack your windscreen. But if birds were becoming bigger because of windscreen manufacturers, wouldn't that make would it make trees stronger too? I mean, think about it. If giant pigeons existed, then they'd rest in trees, potentially, and they'd break the smaller branches off, but that'd mean the trees would take in less nutrients, meaning that they would grow less, meaning the ones with thicker, stronger branches would survive, and they'd spread their seeds into the fertile, unsuspecting soils, just like the alien observers inseminated the populations of Earth. Meaning that the women who didn't survive the childbirth wouldn't survive, meaning these new demigod children may not survive because they can't be breastfed, meaning that the women who could survive the traumatic births would also be able to go on to have other children so long as the alien ejaculant wasn't radioactive and hadn't warped their wombs. The regular thoroughbred children could go on to have children who would be genetically more likely be able to birth these alien creatures next time the stars fell to Earth. Maybe the ejaculate of the gods leaves a sort of marker in these people, and it's not the children of the gods and the women that create these legendary bloodlines that the aliens apparently search for, but maybe it's the children of the women with mutations from radiated cum that created the bloodlines. But, and now this is a big but, what if some of those aliens weren't into humans? It makes sense, doesn't it? Because the humans aren't aliens, innit? And the aliens would fuck the humans, so it would make sense that they didn't all want to fuck humans or even, human women. I'm not trying to suggest that the gods were gay, because I don't know if that counts as them being gay if an alien male fucks a human male, just in the same way as if a human guy fucks a male dog. It doesn't make him gay. Sexual deviant, yeah, but not gay. Even if the human man allows or trains that boy dog to insert its red rocket into his spaceport, it's probably not gay. Super fucking weird, but this is only my opinion. Not gay. He's just a dog botherer. I say just a dog botherer. I mean, you're never just a dog botherer, but there's clearly other issues there within that person's head. But these aliens were supposedly coming to Earth and having relations with these creatures that were of another species, humans. Now, who's to say that there wasn't some that were a bit more open-minded that decided they wanted to fuck a horse, and that could be where giraffes come from. Many of these aliens in religious stories get mentioned as having horns, so that'd explain the horns on a giraffe, I guess. But maybe there was some aliens that were a bit slower than other aliens. Not slower intellectually, but slower in speed. Maybe they saw the original sloths and thought, that'll do. Because they couldn't grab any of the other creatures, like a crab was too nimble, a dog was too quick, they couldn't become dog botherers, Horses, they couldn't catch up with the horse, that was for the giraffe ones, the giraffe aliens, the horned guys to fuck the horses. Maybe all they could get their hands on was a sloth. Maybe there was a particularly fucking mental group of aliens, true mentalists that saw our sharks billions of years ago and thought, you know what? I like the feel of this planet's feline creatures' tongues against me skin, but these massive angry things are covered in the texture of a cat's tongue. They're the one for me. Maybe these aliens were very hairy. Maybe they were Bigfoot. Maybe that's why there are reports of Bigfoot, still to this day. Maybe all the other aliens left the Earth to Bigfoot because they were intimidated by the creature that could fuck sharks. But maybe Bigfoot and the giant megalodons have or had a special symbiotic relationship. Cats use their tongues to clean and brush their fur, so imagine what a Bigfoot could do with a shark if it was to ever rub up against it. Maybe they just used to have the ancient alien equivalent of Netflix and chill. Fucking carvings and drill, maybe. There's got to be something better. Cave paintings and waitings. I don't know, it's not important, but tell me in the Threshold Discord what you reckon Bigfoot and sharks would call the consensual booty calls, tell us in the Discord. Anyway, I haven't looked at my notes for about 10 minutes here, so we'll have another song on. This is Dabbler and Griselia's Psychoville. And that's it for me this week. You've got a few spare hours until HDR starts at 4, so go and give Truth Seeking with me and Jimmy Budd. Give that a go and let us know what you think. Or fucking listen live, mate. 7 PM every Thursday. I'm the world around you. This is Pause for Thought, and you're listening to Threshold FM.